The fog came at twilight, as it always did. Thick, pale, and slow-moving, curling around the hills like it had secrets to keep. Through it, you could see the dark outline of an old castle. The locals called it Grendale Keep. No one really lived there now, not in the way castles were once alive. Its towers still stood, sharp against the clouds, its windows empty and watching. Ivy gripped its walls like an old memory, and the gates hung open, never shut. On most nights, it was quiet. But on this night, a lone traveler arrived. Her name was Mira, a woman with tired eyes and boots caked in mud. She wasn't here to explore or chase legends. She came because she had nowhere else to go. The road had run out. The fog had grown too thick, and the castle loomed like the only shelter left. She stood at the base of its hill, the fog clinging cold to her coat. Her breath came out in pale ribbons. Just for the night, she whispered to herself. Just walls over my head, then I'll move on. As she climbed the winding path, she passed a broken carriage wheel half buried in weeds. A crow lifted off a branch above, silent except for the beating of its wings. The air smelled faintly of wet stone and something else. Something older, like candle wax and dust out at the gate. A lantern flickered. Mira froze. Someone had lit it. Recently she stepped through the arch, boots crunching on gravel. The courtyard opened, wide and empty, except for a fountain long run dry. But there was warmth coming from inside, gold light spilling from one arched window, dancing as though from fire. She hesitated, then pushed the heavy door open. Inside was a great hall. The ceiling stretched high with faded banners. A fireplace burned low at the far end, and beside it sat an old man in a dark coat. He turned slowly as if he had been expecting her. "You're late," he said, voice calm, almost amused. But late is still on time for this place. Mira felt her skin prickle. "I didn't know anyone lived here." "Not many do," the man said, rising slowly. He leaned on a carved cane, his frame tall but bent with age. His eyes were pale, not unkind, but carrying a strange stillness. Yet the keep remembers its guests. She wasn't sure what that meant, but exhaustion pulled her forward. "I only need a place to rest for the night. I can leave at dawn." The man nodded once. "Then you may stay. But understand Grendale doesn't hold travelers by accident." Her pulse beat faster. "I don't want trouble. I just need a roof." He smiled faintly, as though she'd missed a quiet joke. "There are no locked doors here. What you'll find depends on what you bring with you." A faint creak echoed above them. Mira looked up. Shadows moved along the upper gallery, slow and weightless. It could have been the flicker of firelight, or not. The old man didn't seem alarmed. "Follow me," he said. He led her up the wide stone staircase. Tapestries hung faded on the walls, images of battles and feasts long gone. Yet there was something gentle about the quiet, as if the place had softened over centuries of loneliness. They stopped at a wooden door. The man pushed it open to reveal a small chamber with a narrow bed and a single candle burning by the window. Beyond the glass, the fog pressed against the panes, silver in the moonlight. "You'll be safe here," the man said. Then he added, softly, "But the keep listens. If you hear footsteps tonight, don't be afraid. It only walks where it's needed." Before she could ask what that meant, he bowed his head and left. Mira sat on the edge of the bed, heart unsteady. The candle flickered. The stone walls felt cold, but the air was strangely gentle, like being wrapped in quiet. She lay down, boots still on, eyes tracing the shifting light on the ceiling. Outside, the fog curled closer. Somewhere in the keep, an unseen door creaked. She told herself it was just the wind, but deep down she wasn't sure. Asterisk sleep didn't come easily. Mira lay still in the narrow bed, staring at the candle flame. The walls seemed to hold sound strangely, every creak and whisper lingered as if the castle itself was listening. Somewhere far above, she heard soft footsteps, slow, even too measured to be the wind. She sat up, heart thudding, but then remembered what the old man said. The keep walks where it's needed. She waited. The footsteps faded. The silence afterward felt not empty, but expectant. A knock startled her. Just one, gentle, at her door. Her throat tightened. "Who is it?" There was a pause. Then a young voice answered, "You're awake." She blinked. The voice was calm, almost curious. Carefully, she opened the door. A boy stood in the hall, maybe 12 years old, barefoot and pale against the candlelight. His dark hair fell in his eyes, and he wore an old-fashioned shirt too big for him. He wasn't smiling, but his gaze wasn't cold either. "You shouldn't be alone," he said matter-of-factly. "Not here," Mira hesitated. "Do you live here with the old man?" The boy tilted his head slightly. "He's not my father. I've been here a long time." He looked down the hallway like he was listening to something. "Come, the fire's warmer downstairs." Everything in her said she should be wary. But the castle's hush pressed close, and somehow the boy's presence felt more protective and threatening. She followed. They descended the staircase into the great hall. The fire was brighter now, as if someone had fed it. Beside it sat the old man, still in his high-backed chair. He wasn't alone anymore. A woman sat across from him. Her dress was dark, simple but timeless. Her hair was silver, and though her face carried fine lines, her eyes were bright and steady. "You met Corin?" she said, nodding toward the boy. "He doesn't talk to strangers often." "The keep must like you." Mira sank into a chair opposite, them feeling the fire's warmth on her cold hands. "I just needed somewhere to rest," she said. "I'm not here for anything else." The woman studied her gently. "And yet you came when the fog rose." The old man leaned on his cane, watching Mira with that same quiet, unsettling calm. "The fog brings the ones who are running, or the ones who've been carrying too much for too long. It doesn't always ask permission." Mira felt her throat tighten. She hadn't told anyone what she carried, the ache of losing her brother, the months of wandering, trying to outrun the quiet moments where grief sank its teeth. "I don't want to talk about that," she whispered. The woman nodded as though she understood. "You don't have to. The keep listens even when you're silent." From the shadows near the fire, a chair creaked. Another figure stepped forward, an older man with a broad frame, wearing what looked like a faded military coat. His boots made no sound on the stone. "You'll dream tonight," he said simply. His voice was deep, not unkind. "We all do when we first arrive." Mira looked at each of them. The boy, the silver-haired woman, the soldier-like man, and the cane-bearing keeper. None of them felt normal. Yet the fire's warmth eased some of her fear. "What is this place?" she asked softly. "The keep," said the old man. "It shelters those who need it. It doesn't ask why. It doesn't let you leave the same either. By dawn, it always gives something back. Though what that is," he gave a faint shrug, "depends on the heart." The soldier poured her a mug of something hot, tea, but richer, with a strange herbal sweetness. She cupped it, letting the warmth bleed into her fingers. For the first time in months, her chest loosened. The boy sat cross-legged on the hearth, watching the flames. "You'll hear them tonight," he said softly, almost to himself. "Hear who?" Mira asked. "The ones who walked these halls before us. They only whisper to those who need to hear them." Her skin prickled, but the woman added gently, "Don't be afraid. The keep doesn't haunt, it remembers." The fire crackled. The fog pressed against the windows. Somewhere deep in the castle, a faint hum rose, like the sound of wind through hollow stone. Mira didn't feel ready for what the night might bring. But she also didn't feel like running. She sipped the tea. It was sweet and grounding, like something blooming in the dark. The old man's eyes never left hers. "Sleep when you're ready," he said. "The keep knows your sorrow," Mira called her, "and it knows how to let go. Go." Night came fully, though in Grendale Keep it was hard to tell when it began. The fog outside pressed tight against the windows, glowing faintly in the moonlight like a second sky. Mira lay in the narrow bed again. The tea had warmed her, and exhaustion pulled heavy at her limbs, but she wasn't afraid, not anymore. The firelight she'd left behind downstairs seemed to linger inside her chest dot as her eyes drifted shut. She heard it a soft hum, not a song, not quite words, but the sound of something old and kind moving through the halls. It was low and steady, almost like the deep resonance of a bell heard from far away. She opened her eyes. The room was no longer the same. The candle still burned by the window, but its flame had stretched tall and strange, flickering blue instead of gold. The walls seemed wider, the air alive with shimmering motes of light, and there, just beyond, the doorway, the boy Corin stood waiting. "Come," he said simply. "They're ready for you." His voice was calm, neither dreamlike nor awake, something in between. Mira rose without thinking, her feet bare on the cold floor. She followed him into the hall. The castle had changed. Where there had been cobwebbed corners, now there were lanterns glowing softly, their glass clouded with age. Shadows drifted across the floor like slow-moving fog. The hum she heard earlier had turned into whispers, overlapping and distant, like dozens of voices telling stories all at once. "Who's whispering?" Mira asked quietly. Corin glanced back. "They are, the ones who stayed here long ago. The keep doesn't let memories rot. It keeps them safe until someone needs them." They reached the great hall. The fire still burned, but now it cast strange, slow-moving shadows that didn't match the flames. Around the hearth sat figures she hadn't seen before, transparent, silver outlines of people dressed in old clothes, a woman with a crown, a baker with flour-dusted hands, a soldier missing half his arm, a child clutching a toy carved from wood. They looked at her, not with malice, but with quiet attention. Her breath hitched. "Are they ghosts?" Corin shook his head. "Not like in the stories. They're pieces of what mattered. Echoes of love, courage, regret. The keep remembers because people forget." One of the silver figures, the baker, leaned forward. His voice was like the rustle of wind through old leaves. "You carry grief, traveler. That's why you're here. Tell us what you've lost." Mira felt her throat tighten. Her instinct was to turn away, but something in their stillness, their quiet patience, told her it was safe. "My brother," she whispered, her eyes burned. "He was all I had. We were supposed to leave this broken life together, but the fever took him before we could even try." The soldier ghost nodded solemnly, eyes soft. "You think leaving the road behind will mean leaving him too. That's why you wander." Her knees felt weak. She sank to the floor. "I don't know how to stop carrying him," she said. "Or if I should." The crowned woman spoke next, her voice low and almost melodic. "Grief isn't a burden you set down, it's a river. You learn how to walk beside it without drowning." Corin knelt beside Mira. His small hand rested lightly on hers. "This place helped me too," he said. "I stayed because I was too afraid to leave my mother behind, but she's not gone." "Not really. She's part of the keep now, like they all are." Mira turned to him sharply. "You mean you're not alive?" Corin only smiled faintly. "Not the way you are. But you'll leave here when you're ready. And when you do, you'll carry your brother differently. That's what the keep gives." The whispers swelled softly, a chorus of voices not frightening, but steady and warm, like a lullaby sung from far away. She thought she heard her brother's laughter in them, faint, but enough to break her heart open. Her tears came then, silent and unstoppable. But they didn't hurt like before. They felt clean, like rain washing through stone. The old man with the cane stepped from the shadows. His eyes were brighter now, glowing faintly in the firelight. "Grendale doesn't erase sorrow," he said. "It teaches you how to live with it. When you leave at dawn, the fog will part. Not because the grief is gone, but because you'll know where to walk next." Mira nodded, unable to speak. The keep's hum vibrated softly in her chest. She felt held, not haunted. Slowly, the silver figures faded back into the glow, one by one. Corin squeezed her hand once before vanishing with them, his small smile the last thing she saw, and then the hall dimmed and the world went still. Mira found herself back in her bed, the candle low, her face damp with tears. The whispers were gone, but their warmth lingered like an echo. For the first time since her brother's death, her chest felt light enough to take a full breath. Outside, the fog began to thin. Mira awoke to a pale light seeping around the shutters. The candle on the windowsill had burned to a step. For a moment she lay still, unsure if the night had truly happened or if her grief had woven it into a dream. But the warmth in her chest felt real. The heaviness that had followed her for months was quieter now, not gone, but no longer crushing. A soft knock came at the door. The old man stood there, leaning on his cane. His lined face looked the same, yet his pale eyes held a knowing calm. "The fog has thinned," he said. "It's time." She swung her legs over the bed. "Last night, was it real?" He gave a slight shrug. "Real enough to change you. That's all that matters." They walked the hall in silence. The keep looked ordinary again, no silver echoes or glowing lanterns, just stone and faded banners. Yet every step carried a sense of gentle farewell, as if unseen eyes were watching with quiet approval. In the great hall, the hearth smoldered. The silver-haired woman stood by the door with a folded bundle. "Bread for the road," she said, "and something warm to keep the chill off." She pressed a wool shawl into Mira's hands. It smelled faintly of herbs and smoke. Mira looked around for Corin. "The boy, is he here?" The old man shook his head. "He walks these halls only when the keep calls him. You'll carry him with you the way you carry your brother now." Outside, the sky was soft gray. Wisps of fog clung low to the grass. The air felt cleaner, touched by morning bird song. Mira paused at the gate. The broken carriage wheel was still there, the same ivy climbing the posts. But the world looked different somehow, less like an end, more like a path opening. She turned back. The keep loomed silent behind her. No figures waved goodbye, no whispers carried on the air. Yet as she stepped past the gate, she felt it, a warmth at her back, like a hand resting briefly on her shoulder. Not holding her, not pulling her back, just a silent blessing. She looked down the road, the hills stretching beyond the fog. Somewhere out there were villages and rivers, new places, new faces. The grief would travel with her. But so would the memory of the keep's whisper. Grief isn't a burden you set down. It's a river. You learn how to walk beside it without drowning. Mira adjusted the shawl, felt the weight of the bread in her pack, and took a deep, steady breath. The air smelled of pine and wet stone and something faintly sweet, like new beginnings. Her feet found the road. With each step, the fog thinned. The sun broke gently through the clouds. She didn't look back again. Far behind her, Grendale Keep stood quiet, waiting for the next traveler who needed its listening walls.